Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's on-demand presentation of Tools to Master Direct Mail Marketing. My name is Jeanette Rumsey, and I'm the Corporate Education and Engagement Manager for Accudata Integrated Marketing, and I am joined today by my co-host, Raquel Stark. Raquel, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeanette. And hi, everyone. My name is Raquel Stark. I'm the product manager here at Accudata, and I've been a part of the organization for 18 years. I work really closely with all of the data assets that we have available for our customers, along with the technology and platforms that are associated with providing you with those direct mail lists, and then also with our digital and email providers.
Wonderful, thank you. And again, my name is Jeanette. I'm in charge of corporate education for the organization. I have been with Accudata just over 16 years, and my role is comprised of knowledge share, learning and development, both for Accudata's current clients and for brand marketers that are interested in excelling their ability to perform direct marketing and direct mail campaigns with success. So with that, let's go ahead and review today's agenda. We are going to begin with an overview of direct marketing data, and we're going to use this as a level set to talk to you about some of the different data assets that are available to power your direct marketing campaigns. Then we are going to move into an overview of 6 key components of direct mail marketing and how you can leverage those components to create successful campaigns. And lastly, we will introduce you to some different digital mechanisms that you can use to advance your messaging. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. So we're going to begin with that overview of direct marketing data that I mentioned. And it's very likely that you've heard the terms first-party data, second-party data, and third-party data. But let's talk about what these types of data are, where they come from, and how you can leverage them for your direct mail efforts. So anytime you hear the term first-party data, I want you to associate this with your own customer data. So this is the information of your customers that you have collected. This is a very important type of data because there's familiarity here, and we'll talk about why that's important coming up soon. Next, we have second-party data. And second-party data is not nearly as common for typical direct marketing campaigns as first-party data and third-party data. When you hear the term second-party data, I want you to think of another company's customer data. So effectively, it's another company's first-party data. Then lastly, we have third-party data. And third-party data in the grand scheme of direct marketing is really king. And you will likely be using third-party data in the future if you haven't already for your direct mail initiatives. Third-party data is not customer data. This is data that is created or compiled by a company for the purpose of direct marketing. So let's go ahead and explore each one of these data types in a little bit more detail. So again, first-party data is your customer data. This is going to be data that you've collected from your current customers. Maybe that's through contracts that they've signed or accounts that they've established. This could also be data from your past customers. So you may refer to those as attrition accounts, people that used to do business with you but now have moved on. This can also include things like customer service inquiries or inquiries from prospective new customers that are interested in doing business with your organization. These could be leads that are coming in from your web forms. They could be individuals or businesses if you're a B2B marketer that have opted into email campaigns that you are performing. And this also extends to your social media data. Now, the benefit of first-party data is that familiarity that I just mentioned. When you are working with your first-party data, you are working with a group of individuals that are familiar with your brand. We refer to that as an EBR, or an existing business relationship. Because of this existing business relationship, you are able to utilize this data to maintain a direct line of communication with these current and prospective customers. This means that you can communicate to them outside of just those transactional emails. This type of data is going to be ideal when you are looking to perform any type of loyalty campaign, or your goal is to build awareness or to create opportunities for client retention and even growing revenue amongst your current customers. Additionally, with first-party data, you have the ability to enhance that information. So let's just say, for example, that your current customer file doesn't have any email addresses. So you have the ability to enhance or append email addresses to that file. That's going to help give you one more additional channel that you can use to communicate with your current customers. And likewise, in addition to appending things like email addresses, you could also append demographic data. So for example, if you wanted to know which of your customers fell into specific age brackets, or if they were registered donors, or if they had a voting history, that can be added as well. One of the other benefits of working with first-party data is that you can leverage the intelligence of your first-party data and all of the information that you've collected, and you can utilize that information to create lookalike audiences. And we'll be talking a little bit more about lookalike audiences as we move through today's presentation. So next, let's go ahead and discuss second-party data in a little bit more detail. Second-party data is likely something that you won't have a lot of exposure to, but that's because second-party data is typically generated when two organizations have received some type of permission or have entered into an agreement to use one another's data. And oftentimes we refer to this as an affiliate marketing program or affiliate data. And this type of data isn't going to be available outside of these arrangements between trusted partners. So let me give you a little bit of an example of how this would work. Let's say, for example, that you are in the green services industry and you work with a particular provider of fertilizer for your business. You may find that there is value in advertising to that fertilizer company's own customers. So you may enter into a relationship with that fertilizer company to be able to access their data. Now, while that's an example, it's actually much more common for this type of data to be used by large data compilers. And we'll talk about that on the next slide when we get into a little bit more detail on third-party data. So let's talk about the benefits of second-party data. Second-party data can be used to increase the scale of marketing programs, giving you access to a larger group of prospective customers than you may have had access to utilizing purely your own data assets. They may be able to help you identify new audiences that resemble your own in some way, shape, or form because they are interested in similar product or service offerings to what your business currently offers. And one of the really neat things about second-party data is that past spending can be a great predictor of future spending patterns. And therefore, if you know an individual has a relationship with a specific type of business, it's likely that they may benefit from those types of offers in the future. Another use for second-party data that you may want to take into consideration is, again, from that affiliate marketing perspective. It's a great means to gain additional business from individuals or other businesses that are currently working with companies similar to your own. Now, let's get into third-party data, which is really where we are going to spend the majority of our time today. Third-party data is the data that powers direct marketing campaigns. And this is information that you will be able to access through a data compiler or a data aggregator. So this is not your current customer data. This is not second-party data, although second-party data is frequently used to create third-party data. Now, where does this information come from? So third-party data is typically going to be sourced from buyer and transactional data, or public record sources that could include things like county recorder data or county assessor data. Also that proprietary data or second-party data that we just talked about. So this would be an example of a data compiler reaching out to a brand marketer and saying, I think your data has value and I would like to be able to utilize your data in my compilation processes. Could we enter into an agreement that allows that to occur? Self-reported sources are another very common way that third-party data is compiled. So when you think of self-reported sources, think of things like online surveys or offline surveys. And then additionally, we have the benefit of sophisticated models and a variety of other types of sources that are utilized to create and compile this third-party data. So when we talk about the benefits of third-party data, really the goal of third-party data is to have a source of information that brand marketers can access for the creation of targeted marketing segments. In other words, as a brand marketer, you have the ability to utilize a compiler's data to say, I am specifically looking to identify people that meet this demographic profile, and then you can utilize that selection of individuals or businesses, again, if you're a B2B marketer, to send your message to people that are the most relevant to receiving your communications. When it comes to volume and scope, third-party data is second to none. This is where you are going to get the largest amount of access to data for your campaigns. So let's talk about some of the use cases. Most brand marketers utilize third-party data and in a, let's call it a rental model, where they can rent lists for their direct marketing and direct mail campaigns. This allows you to identify a specific audience and then send their messaging for a, send them your messaging for a predefined time frame. Next, when we talked about enhancement of your first-party data, third-party data is actually the data that is used to enhance your first-party data. So if you are looking for information on whether your current customers are property owners or what their home value is or if they have children present in the home, it's actually third-party data that enables you to add that information to your first-party data or your customer data file. Additionally, one of the most powerful benefits of third-party data is that the postal addresses that are inherent to this type of data can be utilized in a digital environment. And we're going to talk about that in the Advance Your Messaging section. But just a little bit of a precursor, anything that you can do to add additional impressions to your postal campaign can be very, very powerful for you. So let's go ahead and kind of wrap up this section with a little bit more information on how you can apply third-party data to your direct marketing needs. The first one is really the focus of our conversation today, and it's helping you to precisely target your ideal prospect audience for your direct mail campaign. So when we talk about audience targeting, it's utilizing specific types of third-party data assets, your marketing footprint or your geography, along with demographics, firmographics, lifestyle data, to help you get to a very precise audience that will be relevant for the offer that you're sending out. The next use is for the enrichment of your customer data. We refer to this as enhancement or appending, but it's adding variables that you don't currently have on your customer file or filling in the blanks. So, for example, maybe you're missing certain attributes. You have them on some records, but not on others. Third-party data can help you to fill in those blanks. And then lastly, the final application that we'll talk about for third-party data is that analytic intelligence. So it's helping you to analyze what your first-party data looks like. It can be utilized to help you create demographic profiles, and it can also help you to predict future behaviors that may occur within not only your current customer file, but within the prospect universe as well. The next thing that we will be talking about, which is third-party data assets for your direct mail campaigns. And we are going to begin with a chart that is going to help you to visualize how third-party data is impacted by the level of targeting. So if you look at this particular chart, there are 4 types of third-party data assets that are commonly compiled for your use. The first of which is resident occupant data, and this data is ideal for saturation, so saturating an area of geography. The next type of data is what we refer to as compiled data, and we've grouped consumer and business data into this bucket. Compiled consumer and business data allows you to access individuals at their home address or businesses at their mailing address by facts, features, and attributes that are unique to those individuals and businesses. Then we have specialty data, and specialty data is an ideal way to target licensed professionals and industries that are a little bit more niche than your standard compiled consumer and business data options. And lastly, we'll end with response data, and I want you to think of response data as hand raisers. So these are people that have completed desired actions. Now, when you look at the chart, you will see that each one of these types of third-party data is accompanied by a level of targeting ranging from lower to higher and a level of cost ranging from lower to higher. So the less targeted that a specific file is, typically is indicative that that file will have a larger overall universe and a lower overall cost to acquire. As the data gets more targeted, like for example within the specialty data and the response data, the universes are going to get much smaller, meaning there are less records to work with, but the level of targeting is much, much higher. In addition, that is going to carry a higher cost. So now I would like to go ahead and turn things over to Raquel, and she is going to take you in detail to these different types of data sets that we've talked about that you would be able to leverage for your direct mail marketing campaigns.
So as Jeanette mentioned when she was referencing the chart, we're going to start with the resident occupant data. So this type of data is going to be ideal when you want to hit every single deliverable address in your specific geography. So really think about this as saturating everyone. So if you have a product or service that really anyone could benefit from, this might be something that you would want to consider. So you're going to be able to mail to every single address, but it's really not going to be as personalized or as targeted because you're not going to have the level of attributes or demographics that are associated with those records to whittle it down. Now, by doing so, you do receive significant postal discounts when the mail is prepared correctly and delivered. All of this information is sourced directly from the United States Post Office Service, so you know that you are getting every address that you can actually mail to that will be delivered and put into that mailbox. And that gets updated on a monthly basis. So now when we move on to a more targeted list, we're going to talk a little bit about consumer data. So this is actually going to be reaching individuals by their name and address rather than just their address. So we've moved up to our level of targeting. You're also going to be able to have access to different types of information about that individual. So certain demographics like their age or their marital status, any lifestyle information, perhaps they have an interest in pets or an interest in gardening, and then any life stage attributes as well. Perhaps they have a college-age student in the home. Now, this type of data is also available for you to leverage through multiple channels, be it if you wanted to do a direct mail coupled with an email campaign or a digital campaign to increase the frequency of which the consumers are going to be seeing your message. This type of data is updated every 30 to 60 days. And as Jeanette mentioned earlier, it's sourced from a lot of public record information, additionally self-reported information, and then proprietary relationships that all of the compilers may have with different organizations and industries. So when we look at consumer data and we talk about the sources that pull in, when we mention the proprietary information. So when we talk about proprietary data that is used to build out consumer information for these third-party lists, think of things like any retailers, service centers, or automotive dealers, any kind of catalogs that one might be a member of. When we move into the public record data, this is going to be information that is publicly available. So really anybody can access this information. So things like your census information, any property information or mortgage information that can be gleaned from the county recorder or assessor's office. There's also historical DMV data. There is no regular new DMV data, but state licensing information, along with telephone directories and then voter information as well. This is all considered to be public record information. And the last group that we talked about in terms of sourcing for this consumer information is our self-reported information. So that would be anything like surveys that you may take offline or online. Those product registration cards, so you've gone and you've purchased a TV, you get the registration card for that specific product, be it to register it with that brand or potentially there's a warranty that's associated with it. And on that specific card, it may ask you things like, what's your age? And it'll give you some age ranges. You know, are you 18 to 24, 25 to 34? It may ask for the average income within your home, how many children you have present. So all things like that is used as self-reported information because consumer has provided that. All right, now from all of those sources that come together to create these consumer data lists, we then can glean certain attributes about that information, about that individual, and put together certain selects that can help us target a little bit more. So one of the popular selects that we really have, a lot of clients will target based on age. If there are offers that are specific to children, they're going to want to know if there's children present in the house. Different types of offers that might be best suited for homeowners or renters living in different types of structures, the home market value, the marital status, and then occupation as well. So those are a few of the popular selects that we see a lot of clients using. Now, we can also drill down into lifestyle selects that are available on that individual. So certain causes that they support, if they have an interest in various outdoor activities, so maybe hiking or walking, biking, the types of pets that they want. Do they have an interest in dogs, or are they more of a cat lover? Are they a grandparent? What are their feelings toward their health and their wellness? So these are all types of lifestyle information that we can pull together on an individual. When we look at life stage selects, these are going to be certain actions that are occurring in a consumer's life where there is a change occurring, okay? So are they a new parent? Are they recently married? Is there an upcoming birthday? Or perhaps they're a new mover or a new homeowner. So these are all life stage selects, and it's going to help you narrow down your audience to what's going to be most ideal for your offer. And it's going to give you actual factual information about those consumers so that you can present the best offer to them. The next type of list we're going to talk about is business data. Now, any type of business list that we're working with is going to look at those specific entities and then the actual contacts or those decision makers within that corporation. So you have the ability, if you have an offer that is targeted to specific businesses or decision makers within those businesses, that you can actually mail to the place of business. So that address would be for the business, not for the individual at home. But you can select by the various titles that are available. You can also use SIC codes, which are the standard industry classification codes dictated by the government to reach specific types of businesses. And then you can apply different types of business information, so potentially like the sales volume or the number of employees, to whittle that down a little bit more. So you do have some availability to refine what types of businesses that you're looking for. Again, this data is updated every 30 days, and we're going to talk about some of the sources a bit more, but think about corporate websites and business filings and telephone directories are some of the examples we'll cover. So when we talk about those sources of business data, like I mentioned, there's a few common sources. So, there is public information in regards to kind of annual reports, business directories. Credit reports is another. We do have credit-related information. Any SEC filings, any news or media outlet information, and then all of the business data that we work with is additionally televerified, so where all of the compilers would be picking up the phone, calling to verify the information about that specific business. Now, when you're working with this type of data, there are some selects that we find are most used. So you're able to filter businesses that you're working with based on certain types of expenses they have, potentially for their advertising expenses or maybe their accounting expenses. We also have that credit information. So if you want to know the credit worthiness of a business, that's something that would be available. If you want to work with specific franchises or not work with franchises, that's something that is an option, along with any nonprofits, if that's of interest. And then as well as number of employees or particularly sales volume, all of that information is available for that specific business. Now when we look at contacts, so while you do want to contact that business, you still want to make sure that your piece is being delivered to the appropriate individual at that business. Does it need to go to the CEO? Does it need to go to the president or the owner? So there's a variety of contact titles that can be used to make sure that your marketing message is being delivered to that specific decision maker at that company. All right, so now we're still moving up on that slide that Jeanette presented earlier. We're getting more focused on the type of data. So our universe does get a little bit smaller when we start working with specialty data. And when we think of specialty data, this is, again, going to be more niche related into different markets. So we look at like licensed professionals. So we just started talking about business information, and that's going to have information about the business. But when we look at actually licensed professionals, there is a different use case there. So potentially you might want to reach a licensed professional for maybe some continuing education engagement, so things like that. So you really can reach a more of a niche market for business audiences, but also consumer audiences as well. Now, the benefit from this type of data is that you also have demographics that are associated with it. So some of the things that we talked about from a consumer side, those attributes are going to be available, as well as on the firmographic side with the business information. So it really is more of like a hybrid type list when you think about looking at the consumer data and the business data. And now these update cycles do vary. So when you're working with this type of information, you're going to want to make sure that you ask your data provider how often it is updated, and then the sourcing as well, because it can vary significantly depending on the type of specialty data list that you use. So let's take a look at some examples of what specialty data could be. So we talked about businesses, right? Well, so we've got industries and then decision makers. So let's say we are really trying to target healthcare or religious institutions or maybe child care centers. So these are more institutional level data. It's a little bit different than a business. So there might be different offers that are associated with that you would want to target. So this would be a little bit more specialty. Also state license holders. So we talked about this a little bit. So state license holders, let's say you wanted to reach attorneys or insurance agents. You're going to want to be focused more on a license holder list. Maybe you have an offer, like I said, for continuing education or perhaps a seminar. But these are going to be license-based information that's going to reach that specific individual. And then the addresses associated with that is going to be associated with that license. So it could be a home or a business address, which is why we said that this was more of like a hybrid type of list, blending the consumer and the business information together. Lastly, another area that we consider to be specialties are really healthcare providers. So this wouldn't be just hitting the office of a doctor's office or a dental office. This would be more specific to that specific individual. So do you want to reach the doctor? Do you want to reach the EMT? Are you looking to hit surgeons? So that would be more specific than just talking to them as a business. You're talking to them as an individual specific to your offer. And using the specialty type data, which you're going to obtain that license information, is going to make sure that your offer gets into the correct hands. All right, so the last type of third-party data that we're going to cover is response data. So this was that very last circle that we had up on that graph, and this is going to be your most focused list. Again, your universes are going to be a bit smaller, but as Jeanette mentioned, these are going to be your hand raisers. So they've displayed specific behaviors of actions that they have taken. So again, similar to the specialty data, that it can be a hybrid because we could be looking at consumers or we could be looking at businesses. We're going to give you a couple of examples in just a few. But this is going to be best when you want to understand any recency, frequency, or monetary value that was associated with a behavior, because those can also be indicative of future behaviors. Now again, like the specialty data, the update cycles on these data can vary significantly. Sometimes they could be updated every quarter, or it could be once a year. So you want to make sure that you're asking your data provider those questions and where the actual information is being sourced from, so that you know that it is that response data and not some consumer information that they might be blending selects together on. So some examples of response data would be when we're talking about a business. So potentially you might want to reach businesses because you want them to send a certain product that you may have to offer to their customers. So what we can obtain is, well, we can know if they sent a $100 Harry and David gift basket. Now that can be a consumer, it could be a business. We can identify that. So if it's very specific to know, maybe, yes, I like animals, but I want to make sure that I'm hitting an individual that has donated to the ASPCA. So we can get extremely specific on what action they've taken and how they've taken that action. So we've listed a few examples here. Another great one is that they've actually subscribed to an Expedia Cruise newsletter. So I may have expressed as a consumer that I'm interested in travel. I think right now, in this day and age, everybody would be interested in travel if they could.
We're desperate for vacation.
Desperate for vacation. But if I've actually subscribed to Expedia Cruise newsletter, I'm going to be more apt to take a cruise. I've provided my information to Expedia. I avidly read their newsletter. That's going to be more response-driven, that I've raised my hand, that is something that I want to have more information about and I'm going to read on a regular basis.
That's a great example.
So now that we've covered the wide variety of data that you can have access to, Jeanette's going to jump into the key components of direct mail marketing.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Raquel. So everyone, when we start talking about the key components of a direct mail marketing campaign, there are dozens of things that could impact the overall success of your campaign. However, we are going to focus on the top 6 that we feel after decades of direct marketing are the most impactful when it comes to determining how successful your campaign is going to be, and different ways that you can enhance the performance of that campaign. So we're going to be talking about 6 different things. First, the list, then the creative, followed by the offer and the call to action, then the delivery, and lastly, the tracking. So let's go ahead and start with the list. So when we're talking about a key component of a direct marketing campaign, the list is likely the most important aspect. For those of you that have been involved in direct marketing in the past, you may have heard something referred to as the 40-20-20 rule. And that was an old direct marketing guideline that said 40% of the success of your campaign was determined by the list that you utilized. And I think that Raquel and I both agree a lot of that is still true today. The list is absolutely critical.
Oh, absolutely.
So what is the list and how is it determined? Well, when we talk about the list starts with a count, not an account, a count. And a count is an estimate of the number of consumers or businesses that meet your criteria for a specific marketing campaign. And to perform that count, we need to identify 3 pieces of information. First, we have to understand the type of audience that you're wanting to look for a specific campaign. So let's say, for example, that you are an organization selling personal protective equipment, and you are looking for pharmacies. So that is going to be a business list or even potentially a specialty list. So that's the first step, is identifying the audience that you want to reach. The second key step in determining the list and running the count that will ultimately lead to the list is determining your geographic footprint. You may hear this referred to as your marketing footprint or your universe or your service area, but it's going to help your data provider determine where they want to be looking for these prospective leads for you. And then the last step, step number 3, is determining the demographic or firmographic attributes that you would like to utilize as a filter to get to the correct audience. So when you think about demographic information, think about factual information for consumers, and when you hear the term firmographic attributes or firmographic selects, it's really the same thing but for businesses. So it's factual information about businesses. But once you have identified the audience that you want to reach, your geographic footprint, and the demographic or firmographic attributes that you need for filtering your audience, you have everything that is needed to create a count. So when you are talking about the audience targeting portion, I just want to remind you of some of the options that are available. And the options that you utilize are going to directly depend on the type of campaign that you are looking to perform. So for example, if your goal is a loyalty campaign and you are seeking to build additional awareness and grow revenue amongst your current customers, your target audience is your first-party data. You will be mailing to and communicating to your current customers. If your goal for your campaign is to acquire new business, so therefore you are prospecting or you are acquiring new customers, you're going to utilize third-party data as your audience. With the application of third-party data, you have the ability to reach a group of individuals or businesses that does not have an existing business relationship with your company. And then lastly, you have the ability to work with a lookalike audience. So let's say, for example, that you are considering a direct-to-mail campaign. Your data provider can take your first-party data and segment out the customers that you consider to be your best customers, whether that's the people that have been customers the longest or spend the most money or visit your location the most. Whatever that segment is, they can define that audience and then utilize the demographic attributes of that first-party audience to find prospects that resemble or look like, demographically speaking, your current customers. And it's a great way to target more intelligently. Likewise, if you're doing any type of digital marketing, particularly on Facebook, you can utilize your first-party data and third-party data to create lookalike audiences as well. So those are 3 different types of audience targeting that you can consider based on the type of campaign you're performing. So the next thing that you want to take into consideration are the geographic targets. So when we talk about establishing your marketing footprint, that may be based on a specific service area that is within a mileage distance from your location. It may be the state that you're licensed in. It may be a radius around different store locations that you have. But no matter where you want to target prospective consumers or businesses, your data partner will be able to help you. These are just some of the ways that you can target using demographic attributes. Now, for our customers, some of the most common requests that we get are zip codes, counties, states, and the entire United States. Some other options that are very beneficial are either a radius count that allows you to radiate from a given location, or the performance of multiple radius locations, where you can earmark multiple addresses and then radiate out from those. One of the neatest things that you can do with regards to geographic targeting is the creation of a map. And mapping is exactly what it sounds like. It is using a visual data tool to be able to look at the area of geography that you're focused in and then identify specific consumers or businesses within that geographical location. So I'm going to go through a few different examples with you. This first one is a client of Accudata's that was creating a quarter-mile radius around all of the addresses that they had recently serviced. So this is a great way to get neighbors in the community information on the products or services that you are offering and making it relevant because they may know the person that you're already working with. The next example is going to be a drive time. So let's say, for example, that you have a service team, and ideally you don't want them going any more than 20 minutes away from the office. So you can actually create a geography within that 20-minute driving distance, and you can target those consumers or those businesses. One of the next ways that you can utilize mapping is to create what we refer to as a polygon, or a fence or a frame, really, of a specific neighborhood. So imagine if you were just awarded a contract for a certain neighborhood, you wanted to introduce your business to all of the residents that lived within, you can actually create a polygon and only target those individuals. So these are just some ways that you can utilize geography to your benefit. So at this point, I'm going to turn things back over to Raquel, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the application of demographic and firmographic selects as part of the list creation process.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeanette. So, when we were talking earlier about consumer data and business data and all the different types of selects that are available, a few things for you to be aware of when working with any type of demographic or firmographic select is really, how is that specific element or attribute applied to that person or that business? Is it at the individual level? So when I say individual level, my age is specific to me. It is an individual level demographic. My gender would be another example of an individual level of application. So it has to be associated with that specific person. Now, there's also household level data. So when we look at household level data, that's going to apply to anyone within that household. So let's say you have a husband and a wife, and there are 3 children in the house. Well, that level of 3 children, that's going to be applied to the household because you have the husband and wife unit there. Income. Estimated income is another household level demographic. So when you are pulling together a list of consumers and you want to pull an income of $100,000 or more, that $100,000 is on the household level. So that means for that specific household that's associated, it would be applied there, not at the individual. Now, when we look at address level information, that's going to be specific with that address. So things like the home market value, the year that the home was built, that's going to be specific to that actual home. and that address. It's not going to change. So if Raquel Stark lives at 123 Wood Street, and she is 40 years old, and she lives in a home with a pool, should I ever move, I'm still going to be 40 years old. Unfortunately, I will get older. But I won't be able to take that pool with me. That pool would be associated with that address. So I hope that explains that a little bit more. So then when we look at the neighborhood level data, that's going to be things more like your census information. It's going to kind of really pool a group of houses together to look at, well, what did they, and usually a group of homes in a ZIP +4 is about 6 to 8 houses. And that could be your census level age, your census level home market value, or income. So it's going to be aggregated, but it's looking at a group of homes, not specific to that individual, really not specific to that. I mean, it could be specific to the household, but it's going to be averaged out for a neighborhood. So think of birds of a feather flocking together. That's going to be your neighborhood level information. And the best example for that really is your census level data. Now, another thing that you need to consider when you're working with demographics is it specific or is it inferred? So let's talk a little bit about what that means. So when we say specific data, we mean it is exact, it is factual. So my age, unfortunately. That is an exact level, your date of birth information. That is specific, it is exact. When we look at inferred data, this is going to be things that are a bit more estimated or modeled, so it's going to be implied. So there's a couple of different types of elements that could be inferred. So at times income can be inferred, at times home market value can be inferred if it's not available through publicly available sources. So important things to know and to ask your data provider when you're working with Select is that, are you getting specific information or are you getting inferred information? And then the last piece about demographics that really you should understand is, the quality. So quality standards are super important when you're working with any direct mail list. You want to make sure that your list is deliverable. You want to make sure that you have accurate information, because if you're targeting individuals for a certain purpose to meet your offer, so let's say they have to be 65 or older to qualify, or let's say they have to be female to qualify, you're going to want to make sure that you're working with the specific information to get you the highest quality and most deliverable list. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what that hygiene means. So when we talk about quality and we talk about deliverable data, specifically for your direct mail campaigns, you want to make sure that whatever provider you're working with is giving you information that is standardized to meet the USPS requirements, because that's going to provide you with postal discounts and save you on your mailing. Additionally, you want to make sure that your lists are updated to make sure that you don't have any individual on there, or business for that matter, that's potentially changed their address. So that's super important. You want to make sure that your mail piece is going to the correct person at the correct address. And then lastly, a few other things to consider are some of the address components. So things like delivery types. Do you want your offer to be delivered to a post office box, or is it necessary that it actually goes to a home? And then things like seasonal addresses. You may or may not want to include those because the individual may need to be there to benefit from your offer. And then vacant addresses as well. Nobody wants to deliver to somebody who is not at their home to take advantage of their offer. So a few other things that we want to talk about when we talk about hygiene really is postal compliance. And a big movement that the post office had many, many moons ago was Move Update. So when we talk about Move Update, this is a postal regulation that was established to really reduce the amount of undeliverable mail. So we want to make sure that all mail is processed using an approved method. This way, you're not hit with any additional fees. So these approved methods. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that is. So the first part about that is there are your NCOA certifications, so your National Change of Address certification. Any data provider that you're working with should provide you with a National Change of Address documentation that shows that the list that you've purchased has been processed through NCOA, and that is a move update compliant method. So as long as when you go to, you have your mailing prepared and you go to the post office to submit all of that, you'll want to make sure that you have your NCOA certificate with you, and the USPS will accept that as a compliant method for their move update standards. Now, another way that you can be in compliance with the move update standards is called alternative address formatting. So you can always be move update compliant as long as you are addressing your mail pieces to that consumer name or current resident. By doing so, you ensure that even if that individual maybe is not at that address any longer, it would still be delivered to that current resident, and that is an acceptable move update standard for the USPS. So a few other areas that we're going to cover about really how your data needs to be kept clean and updated and as compliant as possible is using suppression services. And when we talk about using suppression services, it's removing those records that you really wouldn't want to mail to because they're less than desirable. Now, one thing you're going to want to consider is your first-party data. So if you have a specific offer and it's to bring in new business, you may or may not want your current customers to obtain that offer. So you'll want to make sure that any third-party data that you're purchasing, you suppress out your first-party customers if you're renting a list and that's not an offer that you want to send out to those existing customers. Now, if you've also rented prospect lists in the past, you might want to suppress those out as well because you've already mailed to them. Maybe you don't want to mail to them again. So it would shrink your universe down, just like with removing any particular customers that you might have. But something to consider because you wouldn't, if you don't want to mail to those individuals. And then the last area that you're going to want to consider, and this is definitely something that you want to speak to your list provider about, are really those undesirable records. So you want to make sure that any third-party prospecting list that you're working with is suppressing out deceased individuals. Unfortunately, they cannot take advantage of your offer, and you're not going to want to upset that specific family that's there. So you're going to want to make sure that a deceased suppression is always run on any prospect list that you rent. Any prison addresses as well, and then minor children. So any reputable data provider should be doing this for you, but you want to make sure that you ask those questions up front so that your mail piece gets into the right hands of the individual and you're not wasting printing and postage on records that you wouldn't want to mail to.
Absolutely. Raquel, thank you so much. So as you all can see, there's a lot that goes into the creation of the list. It is absolutely the most important part of your direct mail campaign. So let's go ahead and start talking about the creative, which is one of the next key components to the overall success of your campaign. When you think about the creative, this is your first chance, your brand's first chance at making a positive first impression. And as my grandmother always told me, you don't have a second chance to make a good first impression. And this extends to communications that your company is sending out. So when you're considering the creative design, the actual mechanism that gets your message into the hands of the consumer, I want you to think about how you can generate interest but also showcase your brand. The showcasing or highlighting of your brand is critically important, particularly as you're moving into any type of prospecting initiative, because you're going to be communicating with a group of individuals or businesses that may not be familiar with your brand, so you don't have the benefit of that familiarity. The next key thing to consider is to make sure that your offer, or the dangling carrot, if you will, what you're giving, and the call to action are very clearly displayed. We're going to talk a lot more about the offer and the call to action in the coming slides. So just a little precursor for you here. The next key piece is to ensure that no matter what channels you are using for direct marketing initiatives, you want to make sure that your design consistency extends to all of those marketing communications. So if you're getting ready to perform a large campaign and you're using specific imagery and specific color schemes, you want to make sure that everything that goes out that's associated with the campaign is similar. So perhaps you're starting with your postcard design or your letter package design, but then that look and feel should extend to what prospective customers see on your website, what they see on your social media, and what they see in your email marketing initiatives as well. So let's talk a little bit more about the best practices in direct mail design. So I strongly believe that one of the most significant investments you can make in the overall success of marketing your business is working with a graphic design professional. Just looking at this list can be overwhelming, but a professional graphic designer is going to take all of these things into consideration while working to bring your vision to life. So for today's purposes, I just want to quickly go through some of these, give you a few best practices. But again, please do consider working with a graphic design professional. It can make a huge difference for the success of your initiative. So the first thing you want to consider is what is the right format for your direct mail campaign. If you are just sending out a quick snippet of information, postcards are great. They are convenient, they're easy to save, they're glossy, they're colorful, and it's a wonderful way for you to get your hands into the message of consumers. Now, if you've got a longer offer, if you have a lot of content that you need to share, perhaps you've got multiple pages of information or a product list that you want to send out as well, then a letter package may be a better option for you. In all creative, no matter what the channel is, no matter what the communication is for, you need to highlight your brand. And your brand is more than just your logo. Your brand is who your business is, who you are as a business professional. It's your mission, it's your vision, it's what you bring to the consumer. So make sure that your pieces are well branded, make sure that your contact details, including all of your social media accounts, are included. You want to list as many ways for a consumer or business considering working with you to be able to get in touch with you. One of the next key things is understanding color theory. Colors are not just something to accent our logo or accent the look and feel of our creative piece. They really mean things to consumers, and our brains perceive color differently. So working with a professional designer is going to help you take advantage of that. Just as an example, the color blue, a lot of times is used as a neutral color, but blue can be a signifier of knowledge, trust, and the color green, for example, oftentimes is considered to be natural, healthy, vibrant, indicative of the outdoors. The color red can be very bright and very high contrast, but in addition to signifying in many cases love or affection, can also signify danger or alarm. So all of these things need to be taken into consideration when you are creating your direct mail design. So the next thing is the use of quality photography. There are many different online sites that you can subscribe to and purchase print-ready, high-resolution images. You definitely do not want to use any type of imagery that was grabbed off of the internet for your direct mail pieces, because you're going to end up with what is potentially a low-resolution, highly pixelated image that is just going to look blurry once it's printed. The next thing is, when you're considering your imagery and the overall layout of your direct mail piece, is to avoid backgrounds that are overly complex or would be difficult for your reader to determine where copy on your piece is, because there's too much going on in the background. And that really flows right into the next best practice as well. Be very careful if you're placing any type of text over your background imagery. because depending on your recipient, it may be very difficult for them to read if the contrast isn't high enough. The next thing is, wherever possible, consider personalizing your messaging. And personalizing your messaging can go beyond simply using a name on the mail piece. It can be customizing the images or customizing the colors. But in addition to that personalization, make sure that you're including benefits and how your product or service or your offer is going to make a difference for that individual or that business. Next, consider variable print. Variable print is an incredible technology that relies on data-driven intelligence that's included within your list or your direct mail file to make decisions about the type of mail piece that your client sees. So for example, if your offer is related to travel, you may prefer a beach image for one individual or a skiing image for another individual. And that decision can be driven by data. For example, some of the lifestyle data that Raquel spoke about. Next, you want to make sure that white space exists in your mail piece. It's tempting to want to fill every single nook and cranny with information, but that can actually be disturbing for your viewer. It can make it very difficult for them to focus. They need to be able to quickly determine what it is that you're attempting to communicate, and allowing them to be able to scan your messaging is a contributor. The next thing that we want to talk about is the usage of fonts on your mail piece. So we recommend that you use no more than 3 font styles on your mail piece. There are so many typefaces that are out there today and so many different ways that you can utilize them, but having too many can be distracting. We also recommend that you avoid the use of gimmicks. Gimmicks can be phrases, they can be gestures, they can be anything that would be, let's say, clickbait for direct mail. So remember, keep it simple, keep it straightforward. That's the best way to earn new business. The most important part, the absolute most important part in direct mail design is proofing, proofing, and proofing again. It will not hurt you to have multiple people reviewing your mail piece. Again, this is the first chance to make a good impression. And we want that mail piece that you're sending out to be the absolute best that it can be. So let's go ahead and move into the next key component of success for your direct mail campaign, which is the offer. And I kind of jokingly refer to the offer as the dangling carrot, but that's really what it is. The offer is the value-added incentive that you are willing to invest in prospective customers. So your brand is going to put forth an offer that is going to incentivize the recipient of your direct mail piece to take advantage of what it is that you're putting forth. When you're considering what that offer should be, you need to identify something that fulfills a perceived need and that carries a strong competitive value. So look at what your competitors are doing. What are they offering? Is it a free service with a 1-year contract? Is it a buy one, get one free? Is it free shipping or free delivery or free setup? Is it a discount? Any of those could work depending on the type of business, but it absolutely needs to be paired with a strong and clear call to action and an expiration date to generate a sense of urgency. So if your favorite food is pizza and I give you a coupon for a free pizza at your favorite restaurant, but that coupon has no expiration date, there's really no benefit for you rushing in to order that pizza. Now, if that coupon has an expiration date, then that is the benefit to rush in and get that pizza. So take that into consideration when you are formulating your offer. So let's take a look at some examples that you may consider. I've got many different examples here. Obviously, your offer is going to be dictated by what your product or service is and what investment you are willing to make in your prospective new customers. But these are some of the things that we see and that can be very effective. So whether you are offering a discount, a BOGO at half price, or a discount off of an order, even a credit towards a future purchase, or some other type of freebie. So for example, a free X with a purchase of Y, or free shipping. On the business side, I've even got some examples here. So if you're a B2B marketer, perhaps you're offering a free resource for download. Maybe it's a white paper or a case study. Maybe you're presenting a webinar, and instead of charging, you're going to allow participants to register free of charge. It could also be something like a same-day estimate or a free consultation. So these are just some examples for your consideration. Now let's move on to the call to action. And the call to action effectively is the instruction that you are providing to your recipient for how they can take advantage of the offer that you are presenting. When you're writing your call to action or considering calls to action, make sure that you're using verbs to show the action that you seek. So you want to be indicative of that action. Give that instruction. Keep your action or your call to action short, simple, concise. And one of the things that you may consider doing is restating your offer within the call to action. Okay, so let's take a look at some call to action examples. Now, because we're primarily talking about direct mail marketing, your call to action is likely going to be one of two things. You're either going to be driving readers to a landing page on your website, or you're going to be encouraging them to call. So you can certainly use call to actions like visit my website or call today. But we've provided a few different examples for you that are maybe a little bit different, a little bit catchy, and they can be accompanied by your landing page URL and your phone number. So think things like buy now, pay later, reveal my offer, explore more, hear from our CEO, watch the story unfold, reserve my spot, make me a VIP. You can be creative while still providing that action that you desire to encourage conversion. And now let's talk about the fifth key component when it comes to direct mail success, and that is the delivery. So when we talk about the delivery, again, we're really focused on direct mail marketing. So we're talking about the different services of the post office that you can benefit from to get your very meaningful and valuable information into the hands of your intended audience. So with the post office services, there are really two that we're going to speak about today, and that's going to be first class mail and marketing mail. Now, marketing mail you may be familiar with as the former name, which was standard class mail or bulk mail or even third class mail. So understanding your options and understanding how each type of mail services delivery can impact your campaign costs is going to go a long way in helping you with your budget and your campaign planning, and can play a role in the success of your campaign. So just like we encourage you to work with a professional graphic designer, we would also encourage you to work with a print partner that is going to provide those direct mail services for you. That is going to help to ensure that no matter which mail delivery service you decide to utilize, that you are able to get the highest possible discount and that the maximum amount of deliverable records make it into the mailbox. So the next key component of delivery really has to do with coordinated outreach. So when we talked about branding, we talked about the look and feel of your creative pieces. We also want to be focused on other channels that you may be utilizing and making sure that those deliveries are coordinated. So a great example could be your recipients receiving an email letting them know that something is coming for them in the mail, or you displaying banner ads to the individuals that are going to be receiving your postcard. So these are just some things that you may want to consider. Let's talk a little bit more about the different types of services, and we're going to start with first class mail. So when you think of first-class mail, this is the post office's priority for delivery. First-class mail is required for any type of sealed mail that includes personalized messaging. Now, depending on what you're sending out, first-class mail may be required or it may be optional. But if you are sending out a handwritten or typewritten communication, any type of bill, statement of account, or any other communication that prevents postal inspectors from viewing the content, first-class mail is required. And you may already be utilizing first-class mail for different types of communications that you're sending out to your customers. Now, with first-class mail, your mailing can qualify for pre-sort and automation discounts where available if your campaign meets the correct size and volume requirements. And again, this is where the benefit of working with a print partner that can also help with your mailing needs really comes into play. The next thing that I want to mention regarding your first-class mail is the priority deliverability. So with the United States Postal Service, first-class mail is their top priority, and most pieces are delivered within 1 to 3 days. Now, obviously, things like the weather and distance can impact this, but still, you can rest assured knowing that the communications you're sending via first-class mail are being handled with priority care. Additionally, when using first-class mail, there are a variety of benefits that you can access included with the price of your postage. So for example, mail forwarding service. If one of the recipients of your campaign has moved, but you don't have the new address, the United States Postal Service will forward that mail piece to the recipient's new address as long as they have a change of address or a COA on file. Likewise, if the mail isn't deliverable, let's say, for example, that the address is wrong or that person no longer lives there. One of the benefits of using first-class mail is that that mail piece comes back to you, and then you can update your records accordingly. Now, your next opportunity is marketing mail. And again, marketing mail used to be referred to as standard class mail, bulk mail, or even third-class mail. And marketing mail today is ideal for those non-sealed communications. So this is going to be any type of mailable matter that is not required to be mailed as first-class mail or some type of a periodicals publication. Now, one of the biggest benefits in utilizing marketing mail is the significant level of discounts that you can receive if, in fact, you are saturating an area of geography. So when Raquel was talking about the different types of third-party lists, remember resident occupant data? That's what we're talking about when we talk about saturating an area of geography. But even if you are working with a more targeted list where you have, let's call it, hand-selected the consumers or businesses you want to mail to, there may still be different types of discounts that you can benefit from to help you reduce the amount of postage costs. Now, something very important to consider with marketing mail is that this is a non-priority delivery for the post office. And you may not be aware, but if these mail pieces cannot be delivered, unless some type of an ancillary service endorsement is added to the mail piece, they are destroyed. So there's no forwarding service, there's no return mail service, unless you pay an additional cost and you add that endorsement to your mail piece. However, if you're looking for what is going to be the most cost-effective, this is definitely a place for you to consider looking. Talk to your print partner. They'll be able to guide you in the right direction and work with you to meet not only your budget goals, but your goals for timing regarding in-mail dates. Now, the last thing that we're going to speak to today regarding the key components for a successful direct mail campaign is going to be the tracking. And the tracking is one of the most essential mechanisms with regards to your overall campaign that is going to help to ensure that you have reached your marketing goals. If you don't have a tracking mechanism built into your direct mail campaign, you will not have an effective means to determine which responses came from your direct marketing efforts or which responses were organic. So the benefits of tracking mechanisms are many. Let's kind of talk through some of those. The first thing is when you start utilizing tracking mechanisms, that's going to help you build up your first-party data. And then that first-party data can be leveraged to help you make targeting decisions that are based on factual information and not based on assumptions. So in other words, well, I think my customers are married females between the ages of 35 and 65. Analyzing your responses helps to ensure that you are truly tracking the right individuals. The next key component and benefit with tracking mechanisms is that they help you to calculate your campaign's return on investment. So obviously, you go into a direct marketing initiative with goals. That's going to be to increase your revenue in a specific time frame, and it may be by securing X number of contracts, making X number of sales, signing up X number of new clients, whatever that case may be. But being able to track is going to help you to determine if the cost that you invested in your direct mail campaign ended up with a positive outcome with regards to the business that you earned. And lastly, a tracking mechanism is going to allow you to fine-tune the different variables of your campaign. And we talk about something in the direct marketing space called testing, and we typically follow that up with the term optimization. So what exactly does that mean? When it comes to direct mail marketing and direct marketing in general, testing is a way to determine which variables of a specific component work better than others. So for example, you may be testing your creative. You may have two different postcards, and one postcard goes to a sample audience of 10,000 people, and another postcard goes to a sample audience of a different 10,000 people. And then you wait to see which version of the postcard performs best. Once you have that test complete, you can optimize future campaigns to include the version of the postcards that have the highest performance. And you can test many different variables. Creative is just one. This one could include the list, your timing, the type of deliverability, your color scheme, your offer, your call to action, and more. So what type of tracking mechanisms are available for a direct mail campaign? So really, there are several, and let's talk through those. Some of these range from being relatively simplistic, like a code or a coupon, to being a little bit more technology-driven, like QR codes or pearls. So let's go through those. A code could be as simple as a code that's printed on your mail piece. And once your direct mail piece is in mail, you would train your team members that are responsible for perhaps answering the phone to be asking people, how did you hear about us? And if the response is, I received your mail piece, the next step for your team would be to ask, what is the code on the back of the mail piece? That's going to help you be aware of the fact that those responses were directly related to your direct mail initiative. Another one is a coupon. So it could be a clip and bring into the location type of coupon. Just make sure they're being collected, because that's how you will ultimately tally how many people responded. Another option would be a unique 1-800 number or a unique local number that you could have printed on your mail piece, and you could direct the individuals that are receiving your mail piece to call. That way you know every time that unique phone number rings, that is someone responding to your direct mail campaign. Another similar solution, but for online focus, would be to have a unique landing page, and that URL printed on the mail piece, and that same URL only being used for a specific campaign. Then anyone that completes the form, you know, is going to have received this communication. Now, taking things a little bit more digitally, another option for you would be a QR code. You can have a QR code generated for your campaign, and printed on your mail piece. That would allow the recipient to use their smartphone scan application and be taken to your landing page. So it's kind of taking that direct mail piece and giving it a digital component. Another option would be PURLs, or personalized URLs. This is going to be a URL that is personalized for each recipient. So for example, it would be like a URL that read www.mymarketingcampaign.JeanetteRumsey.com. Then when the recipient hits that landing page, you will be able to track who exactly that recipient was because of the personalized URL. So these are just a few different examples for you to take into your consideration when you are planning out your direct mail campaign. So at this point, I would like to introduce you to a custom direct mail workflow that Raquel and I have put together for you. We've developed this because I know that we have covered a lot of information today, an extensive amount of detail on data, on different components that impact the success of your campaign, and that may seem a little bit overwhelming. So we've wanted to break everything down into a step-by-step approach for you. If you are considering a direct mail campaign for your organization, the first thing that you want to do is determine your campaign goals, your offer, and your call to action. Once you have those steps in place, the next thing to do is to determine your target audience. Who do you want to receive your direct mail communication? Then go ahead and contact your data provider. Your data provider is going to do some discovery with you to learn about the goals of your campaign, to talk to you about your target audience, and to ultimately run a count for you. And remember that that count is a campaign planning tool that is going to help you with your budgeting, and it is going to lead you into the next step, which is contacting your printer for a quote. Once you have the count from your data provider, you can call your printer or email your printer and let them know how many mail pieces you need, what type of mail piece it is, and they'll be able to provide you with a quote for your printing and mailing services. Next, you want to go ahead and purchase your list. And even though we utilize the term purchase, remember that this is going to be a list rental situation. You are renting the data for a predefined time frame based on the goals of your campaign. You will then deliver that list and your creative assets to your print provider. Once they start working with all of that information, they will help you to arrange for any postal accounts that may be needed. And the next step is to go ahead and begin training your team members. You want to make sure that everyone is aware of what the campaign is, what the goal of the campaign is, what the in-mail dates are. Let them see a sample of the mail piece and help them understand what questions they need to be asking to ensure that all responses are adequately tracked. And that leads us into the next point. Make sure that you're tracking those inquiries and responses. That is how you are going to calculate your ROI. At the end of the campaign, approach it with the mindset of, this is a learning lesson. We can celebrate the successes, we can learn from the challenges, and we can apply our learnings to our next campaign. The last thing that you want to consider is the addition of email or digital marketing channels. And I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Raquel so she can talk to you a little bit about things you could do to enhance and advance your messaging to your target audience. Raquel?
Great, thanks, Jeanette. So I know that Jeanette and I covered a lot today in regards to direct mail marketing, but you always want to make sure that you are extending reach to the prospects that you are speaking with, because the more time that an individual sees your message, the more apt they are to respond. So typically you have to have anywhere between 7 to 13 touches with a consumer in order for them to actually take action. So we're going to talk through 3 ways that you can improve your direct mail campaigns by adding on some advanced messaging to increase the reach of your offers and your messages to those same consumers. So the first area that I wanted to talk about is really to have your direct mail digitally targeted
to those individuals. So we've talked about using third-party data for acquisition campaigns that you can prospect to. Well, that data can also be used to hit those individuals online. So think about having your postcard or your mail piece that is being delivered to that individual's mailbox, but maybe a few days before they see a digital ad, so basically, your same ad, but online as they're searching for maybe a refinance option or they're looking at furniture online. So throughout the network that is available through IP, so IP targeting online, you have the ability to extend your reach and create more impressions with those individuals to see your message. So they'll see it while they're online, and then they can actually get a direct mail piece and physically hold that, and they'll be more familiar with your brand and more likely to engage because they've seen your offer more. So another way that you can increase your reach would be through social media. So many individuals are using Facebook and Instagram. They can get a great match to that direct mail list using those channels as well. So any data provider that you're working with, or an advertising agency for that matter, they can work with you to develop what those ads will be and actually upload them into Facebook, into Instagram to target those individuals, again, through those social media platforms. So they'll see scrolling ads come through. And then also you can create lookalike audiences within Facebook to target individuals that are similar to the folks that you've mailed to. So again, extending your reach to include the folks that you've already provided a direct mail piece to, and now you can provide to them again online, but through their social media, which is very, very powerful. And now the last area to think about when you're looking to really extend your reach and get more visibility with the prospects that you're trying to get your offer out to is to add in email marketing. So the addition of email marketing, we can deploy your message. So not only are you hitting the individual at their mailbox, but we can hit them at their inbox as well. And you'll typically see anywhere from about a 30 to a 50% match for those prospects to their email. And again, you can engage them through that channel. So the whole goal of this is to really increase the amount of impressions that you're having with those consumers that you're targeting with your offer. The more time that they see your brand, they see your offer, they see your message, they're going to be more likely to engage with you and become a customer in the future. So we hope that you learned a lot from today's presentation, how you can be successful with direct mail marketing, about the data that is available, and everything that can lead to your success with your campaigns. We appreciate you spending part of your day with us. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or to Jeanette, and we just want to thank you again for attending our on-demand session today.
Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.